Thank you. Good morning, Durga.
Thanks,
Good
Gaurav.
morning, everyone. How are we feeling on this freezing day today? But thank you for taking the time out. And Durga, thank you for doing this. Now, this is a topic which is very close to my heart. Unlocking regional potential and talk about monetization on the language news publishing specifically, right? Now, just setting the context, India's diversity, is well known by 28 states, 8 union territories, 180 languages, over 500 dialects. Now, to me, this itself is a great opportunity for brands and also for publishers to localize and be relevant, right? On top of that, think all of the growth that has happened in the recent years on the Indian internet ecosystem has been driven by local content and local consumption. And news and information on top of that happens to be the biggest category, right? Over 96% people access all of that. So, in between that, well-known fact that the news monetization has been a challenge, right? Ad to GDP ratio, we understand, has been a little low, almost 50% of that of a developed country, which has been in India. This again becomes the opportunity for us to, fill in the gap, if I would say so. So what are your top thoughts? How do you look at this? And what would you, suggest on how do publishers go about building their businesses profitable, scalable, and how do we sustain the same?
Yeah, first, thanks, Gaurav, for having me here and IMAI. This is obviously an intersection of, digital evangelists, monetizers, advertisers, content creators. So, a great platform to discuss complexity, which you've laid out, I think, beautifully. I think 5-10 years ago, this complexity that you're talking about in terms of languages, kinds of users, kinds of access, was beautiful but challenging, right? It was challenging for the publisher, it was challenging for the advertiser, and it was challenging for the user as well, right? I think what has changed in the last 2-3 years is all those sources of friction have completely evaporated, right? From, sitting in Google, I think the great advantage is the very wide lens that you have of seeing this ecosystem of, let's say, 8 to 10 top languages, right, for argument's sake. And what we are seeing is, both from an input level, I think, Vikram and Vivek were speaking earlier, the multimodal querying that we are seeing across search, across YouTube, every Google surface in that sense has exploded, right? I think voice, lens, voice, image, and text have unified to completely remove all constraints and thresholds in terms of querying, right? And therefore the opportunity that presents the multilingual publisher, bilingual publisher, however you want to define, and the user is lot of those, English to Hindi, English to Tamil, Hindi to Tamil, lot of those constraints that we had are all now, literally dissolving to present a new universe of internet content, right? So first, I think over the next 2 years, you'll see a new universe of internet content emerging, which I think is very, very exciting, right? So that's number one, because user behavior is changing. Number two is, I think we're also seeing, and we've done a bunch of work, Gaurav, as you well know, with Kantar over the last 2 years, where we've deeply tried to understand the Indic language user, specifically the news user within the Indic language ecosystem. And I think what has delighted and surprised us is, one, the Indic language news user is the most premium user amongst language users, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by this. When you compare the news user on parameters such as OTT behavior, subscription, e-commerce payments, premium smartphones, the news user is actually top of the pack, right? And I think this is something we need to, as an industry, evangelize, right? And that's a big effort. Collaboratively, we are trying to do, Google and the news industry, to position the news user, the language news user, as a premium user, right? Second, the language news user is also very conscious in terms of seeking, asking, answering, and fact-checking, which are again very evolved behaviors, right, that you typically don't find. And I think these three trends, the premiumness of the language user, the multimodal behavior of the internet, combines to present a very, very rich opportunity, right? And I'll come back to your question. I know I took the liberty of expanding it a little bit to say that today, whether you have a small startup, a language startup, or you have a medium-sized single language local news company, or a company such as yours, for instance, that looks at national language coverage, I think there are enormous opportunities for all three.
I agree. I'll give you a personal example. A few years back, languages were not the first choice to be included in the media plan. Now they are included, right? There's no choice. When the marketers plan, they know that they can't leave the Indic platforms out, right? And Indic platforms have grown. Think of it, but there is still a bias in terms of the CPMs, in terms of the fill rates that happen, right? Now that's a real challenge. I agree with your points. Evangelization is the word. There's a lot of evangelization that still needs to be done in terms of saying how it is the same user consuming, different content across different platforms, different categories, different genres, and doing different things. And it is the same user who has a premium phone, and has that spending capacity. Now that's the practical, pain point that we've been facing. We've come a long way, but I think, we still need to do a lot of hard work, right? We had a very engaging session before this, talking about the effect of AI, on media specifically. What are your thoughts on the AI and the tech that is going to be used in the advertising and media and news publishers in general? We've been doing a lot of work, still a lot of A/B testing which is happening, where we, still figuring out what is the best way moving forward. But from an advertising point of view, what are your thoughts using the tech and the AI, and how can news publishers add more value to the advertising campaigns that come to us, and how do we deliver more ROI on that?
Yeah. No, great question. I think we were talking about the advantages platforms have from a advertising and targeting perspective in the previous conversation. And one of the big focuses of Google this year with news publishers is to think about targeting and optimization, right? And I'll give you two examples. Today when you look at the large news publishers or the small news publishers, and correct me if I'm wrong about Jagran here, Gaurav, but in terms of analytics events, nearly all of these publishers only capture 10% of the actions of users on their platforms, right? And I think this data point stunned me when I was working with news publishers, right? So today, when you look at Google Analytics 4, there is so much of interactive data that you can capture. I don't know if it's intimidation or lack of, our education, right, in terms of what the tool can do, but the analytics has simply not been set up by publishers, right? So I think first and foremost is the 20 loyal actions of any of your news platforms, whether it's app, whether it's web, whether it's a channel on a platform. If you can capture the 20 loyal actions and start doubling down on those loyal actions, right, to then signal premiumness because of engagement, you'll almost immediately move the CPM up, right? So I think in addition to thinking about positioning the news user within the language ecosystem as premium, we also have to provide the data and signaling framework that convinces advertisers that it's premium. And even from a programmatic perspective, right, the minute engagement time spent and sharing and commenting, right, as signals within the app, deeper usage starts playing out, you'll see the quality of advertising and the quality of your value increase predominantly, right? In terms of AI, and I'm saying this in the context of AI, because all these tools, Google, Analytics, NCI, all of them are on a bedrock of AI, right? They capture events and they predict signals, and they will, in a way, tell you your most loyal actions, right? So in my mind, when I think of AI, I'm thinking of data, which is one big stream of loyalty and signaling in terms of revenue impact. And the other, I come back to multimodal. Today, the user is not making the distinction between text, audio, image, and the moving image, right? So it's very important that whether it's a headline, a notification, a longer story, a short story, a voice, a quote, all of these elements of journalism start moving very quickly in a multimodal way, right? I think we need to deconstruct the way we used to think about journalism and start thinking about it in a very multimodal way with the help of AI and with the help of, I think they were talking about LLMs and transformers before. Notebook LM is a viral product that Google built. Time magazine also identified it as one of the top, 50 products last year. Very simple, all of you can access it. You're going and creating your own personal brain or LLM, right? You put in the sources, right? Here are, so let's talk about a live action, right? Here is my resume. Here are all the articles I've written. Please find jobs that are suitable for me, right? How do I rewrite my resume for this job, right? From basic useful tasks to saying, hey, today there are 10 reports that have been released. Here are those 10 reports. Can you identify a certain word that has been provided in all these reports, and what are the 5 contexts? So a story idea, a research idea. It's literally unlocking your personal brain, but making sure that you understand your context, right? So I think whether you're a reporter, whether you're a publisher, whether from the data side, AI as a tool which incrementally makes you more productive as an individual, a manager, or an organization is very, very apparent, Gaurav.
Awesome. So we've been using this on the product side, we've been using AI on the content side, but advertising is something that, we're still trying to find our feet on. Moving on from this, do you think platform, as in an open web and apps, is there a strategy there in terms of, how on the monetization piece, do you see any differences between the both?
Yeah, I think, apps, and I'll talk about apps first, and then I'll talk about the open web. I think apps, by their very nature, are a first-party data product, right? So ideally, they are suited for subscription, I'd say, in the long run, right? Simply because a user has committed by downloading the app. The user is on an average spending 6 to 7 minutes in the news segment compared to 2.5 minutes per session in the open web. In the open web, the user on average is consuming about 2 to 3 page views per session. On the app, it's 15 to 20. The average eCPM on web is about, I'd say 5 cents. In an app, it tends to be $0.50 or more. So purely in terms of the ARPU, right? An app ecosystem is a very rich ecosystem. However, it is an expensive ecosystem. It does take time, effort, and money to maintain, whether it's an Android or iOS app, build after build, making sure that it performs. Because remember, the consideration set is all the OTT players, the quick commerce players, right? Your performance has to be up to par, otherwise it will be uninstalled in a jiffy, right? We've all seen that. Whereas the URL is much easier to discover. It's much less friction for you to discover a story. When someone shares a story, when you search for something, it's so easy to find. Will that world ever go away? Absolutely not, right? From a breaking news perspective or a knowledge and information perspective, I think the URL world will always grow, as it will from a multimodal discovery perspective. But the app does become a huge brand voice, a huge loyalty puller. I think what newspaper print was maybe 20 years ago, I'd say the app is today.
True.
Right?
It's an index of your absolute loyal audience base. But you're right, it's difficult ecosystem to grow. Right? Okay, similar line. Very shortly, if you can also tell us about, between the different formats. We know the way video, is penetrated, and the new generation, and I'm not even sure how many of them are reading, right? So it's actually about watching. It's, all the classes today are happening online, so the student, the generation to come, people to come, all the consumptions go to move towards video, while news publishers in general have been, text oriented, so that's something that keeps me awake while we think of our business 5 years, 10 years down the line. Again, very similar to apps, it's building a video news, website or, platform is a fairly expensive proposition. But from the business continuity point of view, how are you looking at it? Do you have a sense there? What do you think about it?
No, so again, great question, Gaurav. So I think when you think of time, right, the quickest is reading, right? Your speed per consumption of a word or information is quickest when you look at text, right? So if you very quickly want to get informed on something, you read a headline, you read text, right? Second is video. If you want explanations, if you want a point of view, we find that video is, the next greater in time, but more context is spent. The deepest context and the slowest is audio, right? But it's rich with insights. So I would say that each has its context and its mode of discovery. We found audio and podcast doing extremely well for deep insights, for somebody you want to, like for instance, it's very interesting. I think Sundar and Demis Hassabis, who won the Nobel Prize, they spoke across podcasts. It was one of the most listened medium, right? When you want to deeply understand something, you do listen a lot to audio. But when you quickly want to look at breaking news, or you want to quickly understand what's happening in the LA fires, or something that is happening to do with AQI and pollution, text serves that purpose very fast, right? So I think it's a moving scale. I think there is a place for everything. You're right in saying investment in video is expensive, but I think, again, the ability of AI to hopefully make your production or time and cost per minute more efficient is now growing, right? I think audio is the toughest to monetize, but we are seeing a lot of belief and a resurgence in that media.
True. I agree. A lot of consumption is happening on the audio side, but there's no monetization. While video monetization is much better than the display piece. Hence, from a consumption point of view, video is doing great. Monetization, the rates are better. And a lot of money's got shifted from display to video. Hence, imperative for video, for news publishers to get serious on that piece. So we've been doing a lot of it. We've been invested in for the last 5 years. There's a lot of work that has happened, lot of learning that has happened for us. But again, I think, from this session, from what I understand, all the formats become important. Platforms become important, open web, plus, it is imperative, it is important to be investing in the app as well. Great, awesome. Coming back to something very interesting that you had launched 2 years back, which is the Google News Language program that you'd done 2 years back. And I think last year there was the version 2.2 that, that had come out of that. So how's it going? What's happening on that? Do you want to update us on that?
Yeah, no, so again, this was, 2 years ago, we began by saying that, the language news user is getting homogenized. And we need to understand the user more deeply. The Hindi user in some ways is similar to the Bengali user, but is different in many ways as well, right? So along with Kantar, we did a 6-month research, spoke to 4,000 users across 37 cities, came up with this giant research to better understand news consumption patterns amongst digital users in 8 languages. We followed that with a subscription work to understand propensity to pay. And from that, research germinated the Indian languages program. And over 2 years, I think it's been our single largest effort of modernizing the language ecosystem, Gaurav, right? We began by saying, we need to create more content, because today in the internet, when you search for something in English, you get 100 results. You get only 1 result in Hindi, right? And you get far fewer in other Indian languages. So at that point, we thought we needed to create more content, right? Soon we realized the content was there, but it was not getting delivered to the user. And therefore, we solve for latency, right, which is the time taken to serve a certain URL in the best possible format to the user as they query, right? And the Indian languages program in the first year fully focused on solving for latency, just made content delivery almost, 75% faster, if I remember right, and that led to proportionate gains, right? When you serve something faster, the user views it more, they consume more, that leads to better advertising, better CPMs, better ads. Like that flywheel then just took over, right? And in the second year, we focused a lot on AI, multimodal content formats. We focused a lot on subscription as a theme and getting language publishers to experiment. And I'm really happy to say that again, subscription, language users are very happy to subscribe. It is a myth that language users will not subscribe. They might want a few things. Number one, they want a lot of flexibility in pricing. You can't shove a package down their throat. They're very prone to bundling. They like bundles. 3, they want to be able to see a very clear proposition, right? Media companies have a tendency to say, our stories are worth it, please pay for it. But remember, users are now used to OTT. They are used to e-commerce. You have to market to users, which we previously didn't do in the news industry, right? And third, and I can go on, but number of reasons, happy to share the research, but absolutely no speed bumps to getting language users to subscribe, right? So
I agree. It's a game of patience, and we have to keep trying. We have to show value. What is it that we get to you for a price? And you're right. You're competing with the same time that a user has. Is he going to spend on entertainment, on news, or any gaming, or any other thing, right? Continuing from this, another interesting thing that has happened last few years is the creator ecosystem, right? And again, few years back, you were only dependent on the media companies to break the news. Now the news is being disseminated from everywhere. Different platforms. Probably X gets you faster news than any news publisher will give you at this point. And then there are creators, who do different things and all of that. One of the experiments that we've been running at our organization for the last few quarters is that how do we partner with the creators, right? Think of publishers, that there is big tech which is monetizing, there is publishers in between, and then there's the creators who are, and it's the same share of money that is coming in. For us, we work very closely with the big tech. There are very deep conversations that happen. There is a lot of learning and partnerships that happen. While we've been trying to do the same on the creator side, right? Creator side, again, very big, different, micro, nano, all of that, and the big creators. But what we've been doing is trying to experiment with them, and how do we get them to tag along on our platforms? How do we get them to create content and also put on our platforms? So hardcore news, maybe not, but on the information piece, that has worked a lot for us, right? Any thoughts on that? Do you think news publishers will get value of programs like these? Because they are talking to an audience which probably is not coming to the news publishers straight away.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting problem statement. I think news publishers, and here again, I'm more bullish about Indian language news publishers, because I think Indian languages publishers have traditionally not done only news, right? They've done a lot of information first as well.
That's
right?
true.
So the minute you have an educational platform like Jagran Josh, for instance, right? If I was an educator today, why would I not want to be on Jagran Josh, right? So I think if you're able to get a vertical expertise, right? Women and health, HR, education, sports. I think the minute you're able to get a vertical, can you get then 10 creators or make your own creators, right? Because in my mind, creators are really just experts, right? They're experts at something. They're experts in tech, they're experts at humor, they're experts at doctors, right? They are investors, they are study abroad experts. So it's really the democratizing of expertise that has happened with content creators. So if you can correlate that to a vertical and you're able to provide engagement at scale for that creator, I do believe that it's absolutely an opportunity that publishers can capitalize on.
Yeah, I agree. So certain categories like auto and tech, perfect.
Yeah.
Education, great. So there are people creating, individual content. What if they collaborate with you? A while back we used to have guest editors, right? It's the same continuation. Now there are subject matter experts with a very specific audience. So how do news publishers reach out to them? I think it's a great program. Now, great. Any questions? Happy to answer, guys. I mean, we have 5 minutes left if there's anybody who wants to ask anything.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. Sorry, please go.
Also, somehow our intelligence is going for a toss as well, right? Because this becomes a quick fix, I get the solution. When it comes to creating some authentic content, creating something that talks to humans the human way, right? I think we all have to go back and then start drafting that very code ourselves. So what do you think is the impact on quality of content, right? Speed, we got it, but the quality of content is also getting messed up a little bit, right? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 points of view here. I think one is that I think human beings are as biased as algorithms. My submission is I think they're even more biased than algorithms because they don't have neutralizing signals. So one is that. Two, I think it does call upon each of us to elevate the way we think, right? I think I'm seeing a lot of impact, for instance, in coding, right? Where a lot of repetitive tasks, at least, on the coding side, are now getting replaced with AI. What will that do to the way young people skill themselves? It'll be an interesting thing to see, right? I think the internship era, the first job era, I think a lot of those things we'll have to think deeply. I mean, I have a 9-year-old, I'm already thinking about a lot of those things, right? About what will be valued in that sense. I think critical thinking is something that, we've not, to be honest, encouraged in our school systems a lot. I know I'm making a blanket statement here, but as individuals, I think we'll now have to start investing a lot more in the way we think about asking questions, pushing ourselves, creating the right language and grammar, to do this. But I also think that, it's very interesting, but how soon is it going to replace everything we do? I think it's a 10-year horizon. I think in health, genetics, in certain areas, it's a very quick horizon. You're seeing phenomenal change. But in everything we do, is it going to replace basic professional tasks? I don't know, right? I think there are personal efficiencies, but I don't see monumental change as yet. But this is, of course, my personal opinion.
No, thank you so much, Durga. Rather, I would say, I think we'll get into harmony with this, right? We are very raw into it, new into it. And it's up to us as individuals to figure out what I want to use where and to how much, right? And thank you so much for today.
Awesome. Thank you very much.